Nice and quiet. Fantastic. So I now have a chance to rest my noggin for a few minutes. We have a fantastic panel, and we are actually taking questions from the floor, really almost from the outset. So please be ready. There are a few roaming mics kicking around, and I will choose you as I spot you. When it comes to questions, obviously it's a really opportune and exciting moment. Please keep the questions to questions rather than statements, and I will upfront say that I will interrupt any long statements or things that don't look like they're going to be questions. And if we can just keep phones turned off again, at least on silent, for this, that would be fantastic. So let's start with the introduction to our really, really fantastic panelists. You, of course, everyone knows Sam. Next to Sam, we have Professor Yvonne Rogers, who is a professor here at UCL in human-computer interaction. Next to her, David Barber, Professor David Barber, who is the head of the AI Artificial Intelligence Center here. And next to me is Margaret McCabe, who is an entrepreneur and a philanthropist who's focusing on education. So it's a wonderful panel. Thank you for the three of you for joining us. And there is so much from the previous session. I wanted to start perhaps with a question for the panel, which is, as you three educationalists in a sense, you look at what you have seen over the last 6 months. What is the one thing that you would like to offer to OpenAI as we look at this question? And perhaps we'll start with you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Sam, for coming. Well, I run DebateMate. I set it up. I founded it. I'm a barrister. I'm not a scientist whatsoever. I'm here representing humanity, and yeah, I know. That's why I'm excited. So what have I seen? When I first heard about the chatbot AI, I thought, fabulous. This is our chance. My aim, my ambition is to make excellent education available across the world to everyone, everywhere. And I used to think a couple of years ago, how am I going to get there? How am I going to get there? And the AI turned up. I said, this is exactly how we're going to start across Africa, and we're going to take it from there. So basically what we do, we teach basic skills drawn from British debating, which sounds a bit like obtuse and far out there, but it works. We've been doing it for 14, 15 years. And being a human, you have to have the skills we teach. So artificial intelligence is not real. It's not that intelligent. Human intelligence dictates, as you've seen, a very intelligent person here and here. Human intelligence dictates. Sorry. No. That goes.
All right.
That goes without saying.
I'm used to it. Yeah.
That goes without saying. But human intelligence basically dictates what's going on in AI. And what we've noticed is that you need these human skills. So what we do at DebateMate, we make better humans. We have to have better humans. Intelligence is one of those evocative words that's a little bit intimidating because people either see themselves as intelligent or not intelligent. But intelligence really just reflects what education you've had. So, and that's not a perfect system. And what we're doing at DebateMate is...
So with respect to the GPT-4 and ChatGPT, what was your sense of what it would mean for education?
Well,
it's a global access.
Well, what we're basically doing is we can help those who are writing the chat. We help those who are programming, writing it, have the skills that are needed, and they're the skills of empathy, creativity, and critical thinking and resilience. We can teach those skills to the people who are writing the programs. They don't have those now. But also what we can do is I want to be able to offer our curriculums to people who are using it. And that's where I see
so an opportunity to widen access.
Well, Bill Gates said that children now will be able to learn to read and write in a year and a half. We're going to be part of that.
How about you, David, from an educationist perspective? What was the one thing briefly that came out when you saw these new technologies?
Well, I don't know about from an educationist perspective. From a researcher's perspective, it's maybe a little bit easier for me to think about. I think it's a great example, I think, of how you can put resources, focus them on a very interesting problem like AI, and make great progress. And I think it's very interesting that these kinds of developments have happened actually outside of a university environment. I think it's something that we need to reflect on a little bit, to think about, well, why didn't that happen? I mean, maybe some of the core ideas actually were there and coming out of university, but the scale obviously wasn't available. And I think it's very interesting, and I think we need to think very carefully about how we organize ourselves as universities, actually to consider, are we doing it right? I mean, why is it that these developments are happening outside of universities and not actually inside them? So I would like to see actually more of a porous relationship between universities and and businesses and companies who are actually trying to push these boundaries. I think obviously it's a golden age for computer science, but I don't know if we feel it so much within the universities. We feel very much under pressure, underfunded, and I'd very much like to somehow change that mindset a little bit, that attitude. And I think there's something we're not quite doing right. I think it's amazing to me that these things happen outside universities, and how do we address that balance? How do we get that better?
Fascinating. And Yvonne?
When I first saw ChatGPT, I thought, oh, wow, it looks a bit like Google search. You just type in your words. And then when it came back with the answer, one word by one word, I thought it was very clever. And I think it's a really good interface to start with. But I think what we can offer OpenAI from a human-computer interaction perspective is different ways by which to design that interface to radically change how we do things and carry out our activities. So we might like to combine multimodal interfaces, but we can also think about AR and other technologies that are out there and how we can combine these, and also good old-fashioned graphical user interfaces, so that it's not just a chat box, but there are different ways in which people can interact, whether it's teams of people or individuals, whether it's young children or very old people. And I think that's what we can offer you, is that we do lots of research in that area.
That's fascinating. Sam, I want to take questions from the floor, so please warm your brains up. But can I ask you to comment on what David said about the fact that it seems very exciting, but perhaps not so exciting within traditional academia? I mean, how important is maintaining that the kind of research that the academy is uniquely placed to do? How important is it to OpenAI?
I think it's super important. We obviously built on a lot of that. Hopefully we contributed some back. There will be things that the academy does that we're just not well suited for. I think we're seeing that now with data sets and evals and some of the interpretability work. But I think it's great if the academy is good at some stuff and companies like us are good at some stuff. We're a very different shape. We can concentrate a ton of, we get to run as more of like a focused effort than I think an academic department ever could. And so we can say, hey, we have this one idea. We're going to put hundreds of people and a ton of capital into it. And we have a good shape for that. And I don't think the academy always does. But I think it's great that we have multiple ways important intellectual progress can happen.
Thank you. Right, let's get to the audience. If we could have hands up, there's a fair number. I don't even know where we're going to start. There's a gentleman in that fourth row waving. He's got a nice grey hoodie on. Oh, there's a mic, actually, if you can pass it over. And just a brief question, thanks.
Afternoon, thank you very much for your time. Really nice to be here. What role does regulation have in AI adoption? Thank you very much.
In AI adoption, I think it's important to get the balance right here. And the right answer is probably something between the traditional European UK approach and the traditional US approach. I hope we can all get it right together this time in the middle. I think you really don't want to over-regulate before you know what the shape of the technology is going to be. I think you really don't want to allow regulatory capture for companies like us, but more than that, if there are these calls to stop the open source movement, that I think would be a real shame, or even smaller model development. However, on the other hand, I think most people would agree, I would assume that most of this audience would agree that if someone does crack the code and builds a super intelligence, however you want to define that, probably some global rules on that are appropriate. I think there is a moment right now where people are realizing that's possible, that something like this could be built, and where we still have a potential of getting, to some degree, some global agreement and some sort of global set of norms and enforcement. And I'm very excited that conversation's been happening. It's been a recurring topic on this trip I've been doing around the world. And I'd like to make sure that we have, we treat this at least as seriously as we treat, say, nuclear material for the mega scale systems that could give birth to superintelligence. I think it's easy to caricaturize and lose the nuance on both sides. So you have people saying, well, you're trying to shut down small projects, or well, you're just like, you're not calling for enough regulation. But at some level, it's like, let's figure out the capability threshold. Let's move it as we learn more. And let's have a global framework for stuff above that and not screw it up on the downside. I see a WorldCoin orb in the first row. I had to sign up while I was in Europe because you can't do that in the US. And I think like that's an example of where the US has made a mistake in regulation that traditionally I think other countries make. So we just got to get the balance right.
On that point about a global compact, the argument is always that the global system moves really, really slowly. The UN, apart from the incredible speed with which it was set up, is not renowned for moving quickly. So what is the kind of feedback you've had as you've been sort of traveling about the ambition and the ability to bring a coalition together quite quickly?
Yeah, it's like always the initial like, we can't do that. And then we talk more about it and kind of why it's important and also what the degrees of freedom are. And then people are like, all right, maybe we can, let's try. I think we're going to try, which I think is great. But I'm
any
curious to hear
observations from the panelists on that question?
I think locally we're very concerned in education, universities and schools about students using ChatGPT to do their assignments, to do their exams, and the worry is there, what should we do about it? Do we need new regulation? And I don't think we're not there yet, but I think we definitely need to have those discussions about how much do we regulate or how much do we embrace these new technologies and change the way in which we teach and assess. And I think there needs to be important debates about the specific types of governance.
Well, funnily enough, maybe I'm a contrarian, I'm more concerned about students who are not using ChatGPT to enhance their education. Margaret, please.
It's really good for learning difficulties, dyspraxia, dyslexia. We know that it's amazing. It can help kids to read and write. I'm really impressed with Sam admitting that America's made a mistake about this. Because once you can admit a mistake, that's an adult skill, right? And that's where the innovation happens. So I think, and I can't go into what we're doing, but at the moment, we're very keen on making sure that children in school get the best out of this, but they're not known to, they'll actually be educated, there won't be plagiarism and cheating and that sort of thing. So don't be worried, don't be afraid.
Sam?
No, well.
Sam, you look like you wanted to.
I was just going to say, you can find these articles of teachers calling for the banning of calculators in math class when they were first invented, saying it was the end of mathematical education. And it turns out that when we get new tools, the level of ambition and expectation and capability just goes up. So you have ChatGPT. People tried to ban it for a little while. They've already said, all right, actually, this is the most important educational tool in a while. And we're just going to figure out how to teach at a higher level. And that's great. And I agree, if you're not using it, that's probably a real mistake.
David?
Yeah, I feel like, it's a super important question, right? But I'm not sure that we really know these technologies that well yet. It's really, I think, very early days. And I think there are existing frameworks already to regulate. You shouldn't do bad stuff anyway, right? There are laws, against defamation, et cetera, right? So, you shouldn't feel that you can take these technologies, abuse them, and get away with it anyway, even right now. So I'd be cautious about over-regulating right now. I'd like to see, people get very aware of the capabilities, research them. But I think how we regulate them, I think it needs to be dealt with some caution.
Can I just add something in there? As a barrister, there's a massive difference between regulation and legislation. I mean, there are laws against all this stuff now, but regulation is a very amorphous sort of field. We've got good and bad regulation in this country to see what's happened with the sewage problems. And the EU is passing, widespread legislation that everyone's sort of relying on that's going to solve everything. So it's a question of good and bad regulation, how it affects the laws that are already in force.
Right. We'll take some more questions if I could get hands coming up. Yeah, there's a gentleman. Oh, there's a lady there in the white piece of it. Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you, everyone, for coming today, Sam. So a question to you, Sam, when you're thinking about the future and you're thinking about something that you guys touched on earlier, which is job creation, and we're talking about how disruptive, generative AI can be to education. When you think about the role of education as education for employment, historically humans used to be good processors, and computers got to be better at logic and compute, and we were no longer.
I'm going to push you for the question.
The
rather than-
question
yes,
is,
I did
if you
say
had
that.
kids today, what would you push them to learn to be employable in 15 or 20 years, if you think about the speed at which this is changing?
I don't have an answer on the hard skills. I mean, I have like some guesses personally, but not things I'm confident. What I'm confident in is the rate of change in the world will be high. And so adaptability, resilience, creativity and drive and passion and the desire to make new things and to sort of run a tight feedback loop. I think these are all very teachable skills. I don't think we teach them enough. I actually think teaching, well, I'll say that in the interest of, I'll give a quick answer too. And you know, real fluency with these tools. Like that's what I would push on.
Margaret, this was in your initial brief with me as well. You wanted to talk about this. What's your take on those skills?
Well, basically, we teach these human skills, these transferable skills, resilience, critical thinking, communication, which includes listening and speaking, how to work strategically in a team, how to be empathetic and compassionate. These skills that we teach are now moving very fast to the center of mainstream education, and so many learned people say that these are the skills everyone absolutely needs to learn. If you're asking about hard skills, about what careers, you know, we're still going to need doctors and we're going to need dentists and lawyers. But I think, as Sam said, the science is going to go ahead so fast and we're going to progress so fast that the actual content of these existing courses will change, but also there'll be new ones. Like there's going to be masses of new jobs around. So it's just a question of keeping your eye on what's going on.
Right, we should get some more questions going. And what I'm going to try and do is take a couple at a time now and bundle them. So maybe from one of the upper rows, there's a lady and a gentleman right by you, right by the mic person with the red tie, and then there's the woman next to who've got a technical problem.
Hi, thank you so much, Sam, for coming in today. Salah Hamouche, AI Center, Imperial College. I want to ask you a couple of questions. The first
Will
one...
you get one question and one
that's
brief
fine.
question? Because I'm going to bundle it with the other question.
What's the strategy and the vision of OpenAI for the APIs and use it with third parties? And how do you envision that relationship is going to develop over the future?
Great. Thank you for that one question. The next question is...
Yes, thank you so much. I would like to talk about the subject that you have brought previously in your speech about the societies that we build. So the question is, what do you think would be the role of the artificial intelligence in creating the sustainable life on Mars?
Okay, great. I can put those two questions together. So the first question really is about the business model, right? And how you imagine the business of OpenAI to expand through the API. And we'll take the second question in a second.
Yeah, we want to make the platform that people like the most for intelligence. We want to have like intelligence as a service that gets smarter and smarter and better and cheaper and cheaper. And that people plug it in once. We'll probably change the format of the API a little bit over time. We can make it more stateful. We can do a bunch of other things. But what we'd like is that a lot of people integrate our API, and then as we make the underlying model better, like kind of like lifts the whole world of products and services up. It's a very simple strategy. And I think all we have to do to make it work is make better and better models and get better and better at like listening to what users of the API want. That's been a big part of this trip for me too, which has been super fun.
And then the Mars question, which is, can we rely on you to help us create sustainable life on Mars?
Look, I have no desire to go live on Mars. It sounds horrible. But I'm happy other people do. And I think if it's so inhospitable as a place to live, that if we can send robots first, and we can like kind of spruce it up a little bit before people have to go live there. That seems like much better than subjecting humans to Mars in its current form. But yeah, I think Earth is like really quite wonderful.
Yeah, we're sort of agreement that Earth is wonderful.
I would totally agree, and you could take a lesson out of Virgin yesterday, I think it was, or this week. Richard Branson has pulled out of the space competition. So yes.
Space is great for robots. Like we need to send out robots to space. We need to send out the probes, but it's not so great for humans, I think.
Right, thank you. Let's get a couple more questions going. So just at the front, there was a gentleman there, I said to you, and then I pulled you away, in the dark T-shirt, and then there's someone with a check T-shirt behind him. Yeah.
The scaling laws are pointing in a pretty exciting / scary direction at times. Do you believe that humans can control vastly superintelligence? And also, second question, sorry.
Okay, no second question.
10 years' time, what's your vision for how it will
I didn't hear that one. And if we go to check shirt.
It's a similar question, actually. Do you think the world can be trusted with the technology that you're unleashing?
Okay, good. So we can bundle those together. The first question was, will we be able to control superintelligence, and why might we be able to or not be able to? And I think the second question is, are we ready for this technology you're unleashing? I would, as a moderator, say I'm not sure you are necessarily unleashing it on us. It has a different sense, but this is a question of control. Yeah.
I think there are some versions of superintelligence that absolutely are alignable and controllable, and we can build safety systems around. I mentioned like one vision for it earlier that I think is workable. But there's ways in which people control systems smarter than them all of the time. Like, I mean, most people at OpenAI are much smarter than me, but certainly OpenAI collectively is much smarter than me. And yet I kind of get OpenAI to do what I think is the right thing. And there's a lot of other versions of that at much greater scales. We have a lot of ideas that we've published about how we think alignment of superintelligence systems works, but I believe it is a technically solvable problem. And I feel more confident in that answer now than I did a few years ago. There are paths that I think would be not very good, and I hope we avoid those. But honestly, I'm pretty happy about the trajectory things are currently on. I feel much better. Like, these are systems that can express themselves in language, and we can have them do it in small steps that we can understand. They can help us understand our things. So I feel very good about kind of our part to nudge the AI revolution in one direction, but it could get nudged back into one that I don't feel as good about, for sure. I'm, again, pretty happy, though, with where things are. Is the world kind of ready for this, can be trusted with it? I'm a very optimistic person, so like, please discount this, and I think it's important. There's a lot of pessimistic people in the world to counterbalance it. I think the world is going to surprise us on the upside. I think we are, for all of the potential of these systems for good and for bad, I believe there'll be orders of magnitude good and bad. We're seeing it right now. And I don't know, I think, like, can we trust the world to do the right thing without this? Like, if we stay in a low growth world, are we going to keep having wars? Are we going to keep having, like, democracies fracture a little bit? I think like more growth and continual better lives and new technology is important. And we're going to get this one right. I really do. I feel more confident about that every year.
Sam, that's a really future positive note to bring this discussion to a close. We are out of time now. So if you could all thank our fantastic panelists, and if you can all wait just here, thank you. Doreen is going to say a few words.
So, just in closing out, let me just say what a fascinating afternoon it has been, full of fascinating insights, some diverse thoughts, and some things that I think we will all want to reflect upon, not least the desirability of going to Mars or not. It's been fantastic for me, I think, just to pick out one thing that I would reflect on. When Sam was chatting with Azim and talking about the future of work, I think he emphasized the hope that in future, not only would AI empower people in many areas of the world, but it would also improve and enhance the status of human-to-human interactions and the work that involve that. For me, that really resonated because as a university, as a community, that's, of course, one of the things we do every day, whether it's educators inspiring the next generation, innovators creating the next innovation, researchers thinking about everything from what it means to be human to how to create the next technology. And of course, it's what we've been doing here this afternoon. coming together as a community, interacting, talking with each other, and discussing these really important issues. And I'm really grateful to Sam for the leadership he's showing in that space by coming here today. We're going to close now. You're going to leave by that door over there, please, where the sunlight and no Mars attacks is going to happen out there. The sunlight is waiting for you. But in closing, may I just say how proud UCL is to have hosted this OpenAI event with Sam Altman, Azim Azhar. May I thank all of you for your attention and your questions, our wonderful panelists, Azim, but of course, Sam Altman. Thank you very much.